So today I just wanted to talk about some of the different ways that you can start seedlings. There's pretty much 3 basic ways, but then there's a bunch of different variations in between. So let's take a look at what some of those are so you can figure out the right way to start seedlings for you. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am Carrie Martin, and I am just a city girl who wishes she was a country girl who is currently living in the burbs. And on this channel, we talk about all things micro homesteading, from growing indoors and growing outdoors, and reducing your reliance on the grocery store, among other things. So if that is your thing, or you want that to be your thing, then go ahead and hit subscribe and the notification bell below so you will know when I post videos in the future. And if you like this video, then give it a thumbs up because YouTube likes that and it helps me reach more people. So let's get into talking about different ways to start your seedlings. So as I mentioned, there's pretty much, I would say, 3 ways to start the seedlings. You can either direct sow them outside, or you're going to start them inside in some sort of growing medium, or you're going to start them hydroponically, which also has a growing medium, but I would just classify the hydroponics separately from growing indoors with other soil or soilless based growing mediums, which water is soilless, but work with me. So the way that I've chosen to start my seedlings this year is I am kind of in love, and I've mentioned it in some of my other videos, like my onion starting video. I will link that above. But I am in love with my Floraflex seedling starting trays. I just love them because they're super durable. I don't have any up here because they're all downstairs, currently full of seedlings. But so I'm really loving those. They are basically a 50 cell tray, and I can put the link down below in the description to them. So they're a 50 cell tray that comes with a bottom tray with no holes in it, which allows me to bottom water. And they also have a dome that could go on top. They call the whole setup like the incubator. Again, the domes can be hit or miss. You have to be careful that you don't encourage, you don't get the humidity too high and then end up with some other issues. But so far I'm liking them, especially the bottom 2 trays. So I would say that is one method of starting your seedlings, is using the cell trays with a bottom tray underneath, because bottom watering is key. I talked about that in my video about 12 seedling starting mistakes that could be reducing your yield. I will put that link above as well, and I go more into it in that video. So that is what I am doing currently this year. For some of the ones that, like the tomatoes that I would typically pot up, I am then switching them into solo cups. This one does not. Make sure that you have drainage holes in the bottom. That is key. And then I usually just write, well, actually it says it on this side. This is a very dusty one. It's from last year. But I'll just write what type of tomato it is. This one was Brandywine. And then I will use this to pot up in, and then especially for tomatoes, planting them deep, right up just basically to their bottom leaves so that the stem can grow more roots and become stronger. Or you could just start them in solo cups. That's another option. But like I said, just make sure that you are putting the drainage holes in. You can also use these little peat pots. They will biodegrade. The roots can grow through them. You can notice sometimes a little bit of mold growing on them. Usually it's just mycelium, and that is fine. But it depends if you, some people don't like using peat, so then this would not be a good option for you. But if you have no aversions to peat, these little peat pots can be good. They're not very big, so again, be careful what you're putting into it. Personally, I probably would not put a tomato in something this size, but if you have something smaller maybe that you want to do, you could use that as an option, or just buy a bigger size of the peat pot. Staying on the topic of peat, there are also these little pucks. Some of them are peat. I think some of them you can get in coconut coir as well. Then these ones, basically they're just compressed and they've got a thin little mesh on them. And then you soak them in water and they're going to inflate, and you can put your seedlings in these as well. So that is another option. Again, you're going to want to make sure you put them into a tray so that you can water them, especially with these, they're going to dry out quicker. So you're going to want to make sure that you are keeping them wet so your seedlings don't die. Another option, you could use just a little plastic pot. It's just a tiny one. I think it's one of the ones that came with some cactuses or cacti that I had bought at one point. But you could pot into one of these and then be able to transplant it out, though again, you're going to have to pop it out of this. which is different than if you're using these ones like the peat pots or these inflatable ones. These can just be pretty much planted, so you're not going to disturb the roots. If you're popping something out of a plastic container like this, you're going to have the potential to damage the roots. That is going to depend on what it is. Certain things are more resilient to that. I would never recommend planting any cucumbers or melons or squash and anything like this, because they do not like to be transplanted and they can definitely go into transplant shock. So on the subject of things that don't like to be transplanted, like squash or my favorite Charentaise melons, I will put a link up above to my video on how I grew these hydroponically. But so anything like that, like I mentioned, they can go into transplant shock. So one thing I'm trying this year is these cow pots. Now, they are made out of manure. They don't stink, can't smell anything at all. So these ones are great if you have any issues with using peat products, because these are just cow poop and no peat is involved, and they are supposed to biodegrade. These ones that I got are pretty decent size too. So this is what I'm going to use for my melons and cucumbers and squash this year. So I'm going to give those a try. So hopefully they work. I can't say whether they do or not yet because I haven't used them obviously, but I am trying these this year. If you're looking for a cheaper option, you could use toilet paper rolls. And then all I've done is you can cut the bottom, and I just made 4 slits, and then you can just fold it under like you would fold the top of a box, like that. And then you can plant in these. Again, just being careful on something that's not going to have too big a root base in it, because the roots aren't going to be able to get through this as well. But if you have nothing else, it's something you can try. Again, all of this is finding out what works for you. So some people may love something, hate something. Just try it and see if it works for you. And if it does, then that's good enough. Another option is these. They are like little mesh bags. They're essentially the same sort of thing that is around these pre-made ones. And these are called, let me check, biodegradable non-woven nursery plant grow bags, according to Amazon. I'll put the link again below. So you can use these, and then the nice thing is you can choose what seedling starting medium you are going to use and put them in. But again, if you're using these, same sort of thing, I would be putting them definitely into a bottom tray so you can bottom water them. I found that these tend to dry out quicker because they're more exposed to the air, so you're gonna have to keep an eye on them. But the idea is then this can go into the ground and you can just plant it without disturbing the roots. So that's another option. Another option would just be to use like some sort of container, as long as it's got drainage holes in it, and just put your soil medium in there. So whether it's a Tupperware or whatever, again, drainage is going to be key, and especially to have some decent sized holes on the bottom so that when you're putting it in a tray, so you can bottom water, because we always want to bottom water. I'm going to say that a lot, probably, because it's really important. But just so it can absorb the water through the bottom. So that's another option that you can use. Okay, so another way to start your seeds, and it's something, I gotta pull it up on my phone. It's something that I'm definitely interested in trying, but I have not tried it yet because I need to go buy the doohickey. But it's called soil blocking. So that's basically what it looks like. It's a metal contraption. You put the soil in there, compact it down, and it makes a little divot where the seed will go, and then you don't need any kind of pot. So soil blocking is definitely something I'm hoping to try next year. Okay, so another option that you have, so this is again one that I haven't tried yet, but it is on my list. But you buy this tool once and then you have it to use forever, but it's called a paper pot maker. And essentially it looks like that. It's a little wooden device, and you're just going to use newspaper to form your little pots, and then you can grow directly in those. And flipping over now to the water-based growing options. If you have a hydroponic system, I have two. I have my personal rise garden behind me where I'm trying to steal light for some of my other seedlings because I have a lot of them. For the rise garden, you get a nursery. This is the one that I got to start them in, and it's got the grow baskets that fit into here, and then you would put the grow pods in here and start them in that. The reason it's separate is because in the system, that's where you've put in the nutrients, and you want to be starting any seedlings without nutrients, just plain water, so that's a separate one. So if you were starting seedlings, this is more for starting them to go into a rise garden, but that is definitely one option. I also have downstairs, which I've shown in some other videos, my AeroGarden Farm Plus. That is typically what I use to start the bulk of my seedlings if I'm not doing them in, say, the FloraFlex trays or in the cow pots. So for the farm, actually, let me go get it so I can show you. Hang on. Okay, so I ran downstairs to get it. So this is a little dirty. This is the tray that can go into one side of my AeroGarden Farm Plus, and I can start, I think it's like 80 or 82 individual seedlings. So that is very handy. And normally in the AeroGarden you would use these grow baskets, but in this, because it's just for seedling starting, the little grow sponge is just going to fit directly into the slot there. And then the idea is they're not in here long enough to really get the roots to tangle. So that's why the baskets are just built in, and then you can pop them out and transplant them and pot up. Again, I'll typically go to the solo cups. One thing you have to remember, if you're starting your seedlings hydroponically, things tend to grow faster in hydroponic environments. So if it says to start your seedlings, say 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost, you may want to drop it down to like 2 to 4 or like 3 to 5. You're going to have to kind of play around, and depending where you are and the system that you have, to see how it works. But that is something that you're going to want to keep in mind because it does speed up the process. So that basically covers starting them indoors in the soilless or the soil-based. Actually, I didn't even talk about the mediums. We'll get to the mediums in a minute. So basically those are containers that you can use to start inside, or if you're using the hydroponic. Now the other way of starting seeds is direct sowing outside. Depending how long your growing season is, you could potentially just direct sow all of your seedlings outside. I'm in a zone 5B in Ontario in Canada, and we are not known for having the longest growing season. So I start things inside to give them a jump to make sure that they're going to have the ability to get to maturity and that I'm going to get the biggest harvest. So I start them inside and then plant them out when the danger of frost is past. That said, there are certain things that you're not going to want to start inside. So that would be typically things like root vegetables, specifically carrots, or say parsnips, or some things they just like to be direct sown. Typically on the back of your seed package, it'll give you an indication of if direct sowing is best or what your options are. So on this example of my buttercup squash, it says direct seed, so that's one option, or set out transplants after last frost date. Don't let transplants become root bound. Don't disturb roots while transplanting. So those are all important things. So again, because these ones don't, the reason these ones are suggesting direct sowing is because they have such a high probability of having transplant shock. Starting them in something like the cow pots is hopefully going to reduce that, but it's still a risk I'm taking. But I want to make sure I get a jump start on these, so I am going to give that a try, and I am not going to direct seed these. Though for something like carrots, I will always direct seed outside. Another method, so I said there was 3, but we'll throw in a 4th one. So another method of sowing your seeds or starting your seeds is to winter sow them. I had planned on doing it this year and having a YouTube video showing how to do it, but it did not happen. So this is on the back burner for next year, but that is winter sowing. So typically, especially in the US, people will use the milk jugs, but because I'm in Canada and our milk tends to come in bags, which really weirds some people out, I don't have that option. So I'm going for the Canadian option and going with a Caesar bottle, or that's what I will do. Another option could be something like a water bottle, but basically you're wanting it to function as a greenhouse. You're going to put your growing medium in the bottom, put your seeds in, put it out during the winter, and just set it and forget it essentially. So that's another way to get a jump on the season. Again, certain seeds are going to be better suited to something like this, like lavender, or something that can take or needs to be frozen or stratified And those will be great for something like this. So I'll do a video on that next year, but I just wanted to mention it as another option. So now 2 things I very purposely did not mention under my suggestions. So 1, and you will see them if you look online. People will give them as a way to start seedlings. So I will tell you why I don't suggest them, but they are, number 1, egg cartons. So the idea is that this will biodegrade, and while it would, I mean, this is something for me, I save it and I put it into my compost bin. But in terms of planting in it, I just find it's so tiny. Like, there's not much that you could put in there that's going to have room for the roots to grow or to do anything before this even has a chance to start breaking down. That's why I don't recommend using the egg cartons for planting, but definitely use them for your compost. This is the brown that you need because you need to balance brown and green in your compost, but that's another video. The other thing that I'm not recommending, which again is also online, is using eggshells. So same basic reason as the egg carton, because they're essentially the same size. There's not a lot of room for the roots to grow. Plus, eggshells are hard, like super hard. I mentioned this in my video about how to prepare eggshells for the garden. I will put that link up above. It takes forever for those to biodegrade. They don't typically break down. Now, some people will suggest that you crush the shell before you plant it, but I just think honestly it's going to cause more problems, so it's not something that I do. Again, I save my eggshells and I put them in my compost after they're ground up and use them that way. I would not suggest them for starting your seedling. That pretty much covers all the containers or the methods of growing, and I just want to spend a few minutes just quickly talking about the different growing mediums that you could use. I mentioned at the beginning I really like the FloraFlex trays. They also make these incubator plugs. The things I like about these is that it has a coconut core. It does again have the peat moss in it, so if you're against peat, you're not going to want to use these. And it also has biochar. With the experiments that I myself did using the incubator plugs versus other growing mediums, I did find that things grew faster in them, definitely, especially the peppers. I had planted peppers in the incubator plugs and in some of the Pro Mix seedling starting mix, and all of the ones in the plugs came up much sooner than they did in the seedling starting mix. What that means for later on, I don't know, but definitely for germination, it did seem to make a difference. Next, the other thing that I use a lot is I really like Pro Mix. That's just my preference. I know there's a lot of other good ones. Fox Farm is supposed to be another good one. And one I think that a lot of people use in the States is Espoma or something like that. I haven't used either of those yet. I do want to try the Fox Farm, but so far I just use a Pro Mix. It's a little bit easier for me to get. And this is the seedling starting mix. I will put the link below to all the things I'm mentioning. But another option, which I usually start in the seedling starting Pro Mix, and then I will incorporate, when I pot them up, I will just use some potting soil. This is just some run-of-the-mill stuff because I ran out and this was what they had at the store. Ideally, I would have liked to have used some Pro Mix potting mix, but you use what you have. Another thing you could use is the vermiculite to grow in. I haven't tried this yet. I have used it on top of my seedlings to help keep the soil not as moist on top and to help prevent damping off. People I have heard do grow using vermiculite. I'm going to do some more testing, maybe later on in the season, doing it with different growing methods to see which one works best, but this is another option. Another one that you could use is coconut coir. Definitely that's an option that you could use. I don't have any on hand, but it can come in kind of a dehydrated puck like this, typically without the mesh on it, and then you can soak it and it'll inflate, and then it grows really big, and then you can use that to plant in. Or I think you can get it loose as well. So that's it. There you have it. Some of my suggestions for how to start seedlings the way that I do it, and some other options that other people have, and some other things that, at least for me, I want to try moving forward, because I'm always trying to try different things. Sometimes you go with what you know, and sometimes it's always good to just have a little trial or a little experiment going on the side to see if maybe there's a better way. So I would love to know how you start your seedlings, so let me know down in the comments below. Is there anything I've suggested that you don't like, or is there something that I didn't even mention that you do? So go ahead and share that. I'm always looking to learn, so I definitely like to know what you do and what works for you. And if there's something you've tried and it didn't work, go ahead and share that as well. So if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I also have down in the description below a link to some free downloadable seed packages, and also a link to my new month-to-month garden planner to help you grow more in small spaces, because that is what I'm all about. Especially as a micro homesteader, it's making the most of whatever space you have. And part of that is not just planting once, but planting multiple times, and ideally every single month. So I have the link down below to that, and also to my new Etsy shop where there are some other downloadable seed packages that you can check out. So that's it. I'll let you guys go. Thank you for hanging out with me as I talk about some of the ways to start your seedlings. And until next time, go out there and make food grow.